The hardest part about this whole thing was I was constantly worried. Like, constantly. Oh. And I was so scared because I didn't know what she was actually wrong. And that was really, really tough. And Christina didn't see me cry that much during this time because I really tried to keep strong. This is really tough. I really wish I didn't have to make a video that is called this. But here we are, and this is the reality. Just before we start, I just want to make it clear that we're not making this video for views or for personal gain in any way, obviously. But we're making it because this is the video we would have liked to see in ourselves when we went through this, or we're still going through it, but I had no idea it could get this bad as it actually did. In November of 2021, we found out that we were pregnant, and I was really happy about it. But Christina were more happy, of course, but very much in shock.
No, there's only one line, and you.
Yeah, but if you look at the lines, inte gravid,
Yeah.
not pregnant, is that way.
Gravid. No, that is not pregnant. That is one line.
Yeah, but one line going horizontal.
It doesn't have to. Isn't it just because it? I'm pregnant. No, I just. Can I open this one just to see if that's starting?
Yeah, absolutely. But do you think you can see across, right? It's not just one line.
Oh God.
Then you might be pregnant.
Do you think so?
Maybe.
Okay, we have to do it again. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay.
Oh God. That is so weird. And I'm so afraid that this is not valid. You know, it's not.
Yeah, no.
It's actually lying, and I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
You know. You know what I mean? I almost want to take 20 or something just to be sure.
After that, it was a few weeks of a bit tough pregnancy for Christina. She felt very nauseous and couldn't do much in the house. And then we came into December, 11th of December to be exact. And she got this really bad feeling in her stomach that she couldn't really understand. She started to get worried, but me as the protector was like, no, it's fine. This is completely normal. I just sat there and Googled. Tried to be a bit, try to get a bit smarter about it. Then in the evening, she actually started bleeding, which I read could happen, but deep down I think I started to understand what was going on, but I didn't want to understand it because it was so sad. So her stomach ache got worse and worse. This is really tough. Then she got, a few hours later, she got a second bleed that was way worse. And again, Googled what could be normal because I knew that miscarriage is a very normal thing. Actually, 50% of all pregnancies end up in a miscarriage. We started to understand that we're maybe losing the baby because we've had this period of several weeks where several weeks or almost a month where we've gotten used to the idea of now we're gonna become parents in July. When you get that idea into your head, you get really happy about it, but yeah, her stomach ache got worse and worse, and she started getting, what I understood later was actually contractions. I think that's the word for it. The pain just got worse and worse, and I started getting really, really worried because I felt so out of control, because I was living in the middle of nowhere and I had no one around me to ask or yeah, that was really tough, just being in that emotion by myself, trying to take care of her. But just to clarify, this whole version that I'm telling now is my version, my experience as a man in this whole journey that we went through. I know she went through something way, way worse, both physically and mentally, but this is my version of what we went through, just so we make that clear. Midnight came, the stomach aches was like insane at this point. She was on the floor, really hurting. And that was really tough, seeing the one you love in that much pain. The stomach pains just continued after midnight for a long time. And I think around 2 or 3 o'clock we sat down, both of us she was still on the floor, but I was now holding her on the floor, and she felt like this just immense pain in her stomach, and then suddenly we lost the baby. That was very clear what happened, especially to her and her body, that something actually came out. And then there was no doubt anymore what has happened. And for her, that was an experience you shouldn't have to go through, either physically or mentally. And I felt just so sorry for her, because I couldn't do anything more than holding her and taking care of her. So I started calling the hospital, and I got through after a while, and they say that, yeah, you should go into the emergency room just to be sure that everything is going the way it should be. A miscarriage is normal, they said, but not that normal. In like a week 11, it usually happens a bit earlier. They said that, or I knew from the beginning, that the first 12 weeks are a bit unstable and you don't really know what's going to happen. So I had to tell her to get, that's really tough as well, like when you see someone in that much pain and then tell them that, honey, we have to go to the emergency room, and I know there's 1.5 hours drive to that place. We have a hospital closer to us, but they don't have a emergency room with a gynecologist as a specialist. So we had to go to Sundsvall, which is the biggest, closest city to us. So I helped her to the car. We packed as much as we could figure out. Went to Sundsvall. We actually got to see the doctor quite quickly, and that is the best thing about Sweden's healthcare system, because you only have to pay like a fee for seeing a doctor, basically, because it's an emergency. So that was 500 crowns, which is, I don't know, $50 ish. But all the treatments and blood samples and everything is completely free after that, which is quite amazing. So we got to see the doctor and or the gynecologist, and they did an ultrasound and found out that there's still some parts of the pregnancy still in the uterus that hadn't gone out. So the doctor just cleaned her up, and we were allowed to go home. And then we've been in the emergency room for maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours maybe. And then we drove home 1.5 hours. And then when we were back home in the cabin again, we just rested and tried to heal as good as we could, because yeah, it was just like so emotional. It was very hard to grasp what we were actually going through. And at that point we actually thought that, like, okay, now it's over. It was a miscarriage. They've looked at it, looks good now, and we can start moving on and healing from this. But that was only the beginning, unfortunately. The day after that, again, during nighttime, around midnight, she started getting real stomach aches and she got a fever again, or for the first time actually. So I drove her into the emergency room in Sollefteå, which is closer, half an hour away. And like, it's so hard to be in that situation where you have one person that is suffering so much and you have to be the strong one, even though you're absolutely panicking inside. I think that was the toughest thing for me, actually. Just being the strong one, even though I just wanted to curl up as like a small ball and just disappear. But I had to be strong for her sake, so she would feel safe a bit at least. So we went into Sollefteå, we got a lot of blood samples, and after a few hours they sent us home again. They said that if she gets stomach aches again or something like that, or if the fever starts to rise again, you have to tell us, because then you have to go in again. But the fever went down and she started feeling better. As much good as you can feel in a situation like this. She felt horrible of course, because for her it was really tough, because she started to blame herself a lot. She started to think like, what did I do wrong? What did I eat wrong? What if I killed this baby? But she of course didn't. This happens. Like I said, it's 50% of all pregnancies ends up in miscarriage. Yeah, it was really tough seeing her blaming herself that much. But later that night, now we're in the third day, I think, it's really hard to keep track of the days, because everything is just a blur. And again at nighttime, fever started to rise and she got really bad stomach aches, or around the uterus or on the sides of her body. Again, I have to tell her that, sorry honey, I'd have to take you to the car and we have to go to Sundsvall. That's again 1.5 hours in the car. And to tell someone with like 39 degrees Celsius in fever, that's quite high. A really like weak body, both physically and mentally, like I have to drive you in again. That was really tough, because she just wanted to be in bed and disappear, and I had to push her to go to the hospital. She knew that was the right thing, but it was just really tough. So we went in again, and then she was really hospitalized for the first time, because they understood that, okay, this is something that is not right here. Something is wrong, because she's not getting better at all. And now we're, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 days into this miscarriage story, and we're only halfway through. So we got hospitalized. She got some medications, she got some painkillers to relax, they got new blood samples. We joked about that is she almost gonna be drained of blood at this point, because they took so many blood samples trying to figure out what it was. But the staff at both Sundsvall and Sollefteå has been super, super kind, very, very caretaking. And yeah, if you by any chance are watching this, I want to say thank you, because you made it a bit easier, being really sweet and caretaking, and was able to joke with us a bit and just make it easier, because it's a really hard situation. But they were really sweet, and we were hospitalized for 3 days, and I was luckily allowed to stay there. I don't think I actually was allowed to stay there, but I didn't want to leave, so I just hold on. Luckily, sometimes I got my own bed and sometimes I didn't, but I was still in the room with her, and that was the most important part. And for Christina, I know this, we've been talking about it afterwards, it's been really tough for her, showing herself so weak in front of me, or she felt very weak and vulnerable. I didn't even think about that at the moment, because I was so concerned about her, because you don't really you don't really understand how much you love a person until you actually see them sick, or then you understand how much you love that person, because otherwise it's life just continue and you for some reason take it for granted. But when someone is sick, you just panic if something should happen. But she's felt really vulnerable that I had to take care of her, like helping her shower and everything. We were there for 3 days, and they still didn't really figure out what was wrong. We did more gynecology tests. I don't know how many doctors or nurses or midwives we saw during these days, but a lot. At the 5th or 6th day there, the 3rd day at the hospital, she went into what they call a surgery, but they're not actually cutting her up or anything. They're sedating her and then going in with like a small suction thing and taking out the small pieces that was still in the uterus that was probably creating an infection or something, but there was no infection in the blood work or anything, so they were still a bit confused. The day after the surgery, we got to go home again, and we were home for maybe 3 days, just trying to rest, but it was so hard because you couldn't think about anything and do anything. Luckily we had help with the dogs, which I want to say thank you to. Thank you to our friend Nicole and Niklas, who met up with me when we were halfway through this and took care of the dogs for over a week. Otherwise they would have been sitting in the car the entire time. So Nicole and Niklas, thank you so much, it meant a lot. So after the day after the surgery, we went home again and stayed in the cabin for maybe 3 or 4 days, and they said again that if something should come up, if the fever should start to rise again, or if she gets cramps or anything, just come in immediately. Like, the hardest part about this whole thing was I was constantly worried, like constantly. Oh, and I was so scared because I didn't know what she was actually wrong, and that was really, really tough. And Christina didn't see me cry that much during this time because I really try to keep strong. I believe in crying and let everything out, but at that point I don't think I had that priority. I just focused on her and just skipped my emotions. So the only time I cried was when I went away and like hid it from her. I went to the car, I cried a lot of the times. When I called my parents, or when I called Nicole to ask about how the dogs were, I cried my eyes out. But I had to make sure that Christina was fine and just calm and saw me stable, because that's how she and I work. When one crashes, the other one is stable, and when the other one is more stable again, the other one can crash. And I crashed a lot after this whole thing, but I couldn't do that when we were in the middle of it. We were back at the cabin again after the 3rd hospital visit, and then after 3 or 4 days, I think, she was on antibiotics, and it felt like the surgery, it went well, but she didn't get better. She actually got worse and worse. And we talked to our midwife called Hanna, the sweetest woman ever. And she said, like, yeah, just come in again if something should happen. And then, I don't even know what day we're on right now, and then all of a sudden in the cabin, I decided like that, we have to go in again. You're too bad. You're getting a fever again. The stomach is hurting again. There is something wrong. So we went in again, 1.5 hours drive to Sundsvall. So we were in the hospital, and again for the 4th time now, seeing the same doctors and same nurses and everything. And they were really sad that they had to see us again, of course. But we did more blood samples, more ultrasounds, and we got to stay there for 2 or 3 days, I think. But they didn't really, again, figure out what was wrong. They just like, you maybe have a virus in you or something, that because the immune system got so low when we went through the miscarriage, because the whole body is just crashing. If she caught something during that time, maybe that's what's caused the whole unbalance in the body. So we stayed there for a few days, and then we were sent home again because she felt okay under the circumstances, of course. And then we were in the cabin and just completely emotional and physically drained. Again, of course, she was going through way more than I ever could imagine. And she still felt a lot of guilt that she had, for some reason, killed the baby, but she of course hadn't. But after that, it started to get a bit better. Slowly. She was still just in bed and couldn't really eat anything, couldn't, do anything. Just stayed in bed. We're still going through it emotionally, that we're actually lost the baby and not gonna be parents now this summer. And we haven't even told my parents that we were pregnant, because we wanted to surprise them as a Christmas gift. But we didn't get to do that. The call was about the miscarriage instead of the pregnancy. So you can say that December has been quite of a challenge and still is, but we still wanted to make these videos because explain that December has been really shit. We just had Christmas Eve by ourselves, New Year's by ourselves. We didn't get to see our families, and we both felt that we couldn't really continue making videos from the cabin being happy if we haven't told the story, because that didn't feel correct at all to do. I like to be honest with you what's going on, because it's not always a sunshine story at all. But we couldn't really share it, of course, while we were in it, because we had even no idea what was going on and how long it was going to take. But as you can see, it's still very emotional and it's very hard to talk about. But I think this is going to be a bit of a healing process for us to share this as well. And what we've really discovered is that when we started talking about this amongst friends and family and relatives, it's like how extremely common this is with miscarriages. Not as extreme as we had it with the going back and forth to the hospital all the time, but the miscarriage thing, I will say maybe 30% of my friends that I've talked to have experienced miscarriages, and almost all the others have heard about it or know someone that has gone through it. And I think that's why it's so important to talk about, because it's such a taboo for some reason, even though again 50% goes through this. It's a completely normal thing when the fetus or the baby is not healthy or something is wrong, and it pushes it away from the body. So we just wanted to bring it up and basically normalize it. I don't know if this is gonna help anyone that has gone through it, but it's helping us at least to share it and talk about it. And it's a part of the healing process, I think. And now we just have to take day by day after this. And the whole miscarriage thing is a big thing in itself, of course. But last night, or actually early this morning, my grandpa passed away as well. So it's just a bit too much at the same time. If you're still here watching, thank you. Thank you for your patience. This is a very uncommon video for me. It was very hard to decide if we should share it or not, because we always debate about when we bring up different subjects, is this private or is this personal? Because if it's private, we keep it to ourselves, and if it's personal, we share it. But this is beyond private, especially for Christina, because it's her body. But we still thought it was worth sharing, because I would have liked to see a video like this that I knew that it could go this bad. Then I wouldn't have panicked as much as I did in the cabin, just seeing her in so much pain that this could also happen. I actually had no idea. I knew that miscarriages were very normal, but not this extreme. I don't even know how to end this video. If you enjoyed it, and if you've maybe know someone or been through it yourself, if you feel like sharing it, you're more than welcome to do that, because we want to spread the word about this, that this is a very normal thing and we should talk about it more. So if you feel like it, share it, because I think it's a story worth talking about, and maybe it can get the conversation started, at least, to take away the taboo about it a bit, at least. We'll talk soon again when we're back in the cabin and everything is a bit more normal. Oh. Okay. Bye, guys. Talk soon.